I'm Jackie Doucette, and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9 to 5. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today, it's my pleasure to be joined by John Tarnoff. And having been fired 39% of the time during the first 35 years of his career, he's learned how to turn setbacks into successes. He reinvented his own career at the age of 50, earning a master's degree in counseling psychology. And he's a career transition coach now who focuses on helping professionals in the middle and later stages of their career to define, plan, and achieve more meaningful and sustainable careers. John, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me on, Jackie. I'm really pleased to be here.
I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I was looking at your website just before we started, and I think your whole focus is the same kind of thing that I'm aiming at, that, you know, there is life out there after retirement. You don't have to retire. Maybe you can't retire, all of those sorts of things. But one of the things that I saw was a quote or a message on your site that says, just because you stop being the right fit for a job doesn't make you a bad person or a failure. And I think right now, especially where some people have maybe lost their jobs or retired because of COVID, they might be thinking that, you know, maybe I can't do it. What do I do now? I've had that job forever. What can you tell them? What can you talk about that kind of leads them into the right direction, the right frame of mind?
Right. Well, I think you bring up something which is really, really key. And it is when people ask me, what is the biggest challenge to reinventing your career, perpetuating your career, kind of figuring out a new configuration for your career at this age, particularly for people who have been fired, laid off, forced into early retirement, whatever you want to call it. And it is this identification with the job that you've had that can really create this block against conceiving of and certainly moving towards something new. So I would say for anyone who is kind of caught kind of dead in your tracks around, oh my God, I've worked in this company for, in some cases, I see people who've worked for their entire careers in one company, obviously different roles progressing through the ranks, different divisions. But, even if you've been in a company for 5 or 10 years, you build up significant attachments, significant identification to that role, to the people that you've worked with. It's devastating to leave that position. So it's really important to figure out how you're going to be able to move on. And my message is, and I know it's your message is, yes, there is a future, right? If you are no longer a fit for the job that you have just left or been pushed out of, there is another fit for you. And I would venture to say that many people who get into their 50s are suffering from this sense of disconnection with the role that they have been performing and performing very well, because we change in our 50s. And Carl Jung talked about this in his writing a lot. And there's a lot of psychological literature around this psychological change that happens to us as we get into our 50s, as we get older. There's a psychologist named Erik Erikson who talks about this a lot in his life stages system. And when we get into our 50s, we are all of a sudden drawn to creating lives that have a greater degree of meaning and purpose. And in our earlier lives, naturally, we were concerned about getting to work, learning our job, becoming experts. Many of us, maybe most of us, got into relationships, figured that out, raised families, learned how to navigate, those transitions, getting the kids through school, out the door. And when you've got this kind of life experience behind you of having overcome all of these challenges and learned all of these lessons, you kind of wake up at 50, 55 going, okay, well, what's next? And you begin to question a lot of what's been going on for yourself professionally. So this is a great opportunity not to kind of go, oh my God, life is over, but this is just another transition. It's a big transition, but we've got decades ahead of us. And it's no longer a culture where, or a condition where you get to 65 and you're done. And there is that gold watch and this pension, and you go and sit home and you wait to die, which is the industrial era model. It just doesn't apply anymore. We are living older. If you hit 65 today, according to the Census Bureau, you have a better than 1 in 4 chance of living past 90.
Wow.
And every year that you age past 65 increases the odds that you're going to live past 90. So in a crazy way, the older you get, the older you're going to get. And what are we going to do for all that period of time? We're certainly not going to be sitting on the porch, rocking away. I don't think we're going to be playing golf all that time, or canasta, or whatever we're supposed to be doing in retirement villages. I mean, that seems to be from another generation. So our generation and the generations that are coming up younger than we are much more active, are much more engaged, are much more interested in continuing to find that purpose, to exercise that purpose, to keep working, or to make an impact. That you don't have to necessarily be working in a full-time job, making a full-time salary for the rest of your life. That should be an option for some people. I think the beauty of it, and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I think part of the beauty of this period of life is that we get to make some more nuanced choices around what we're going to do. And if you look at the numbers on the statistics on entrepreneurship, the successful entrepreneurs are the successful entrepreneurs over 40, over 50 who start businesses later in life because they know how to do it. They have the wisdom to be able to actually avoid the problems that younger entrepreneurs have. So we have so many abilities and opportunities. We just need to, in many cases, reframe this sense of ourselves and what we're capable of, and open up to getting feedback and direction and collaboration from others who are our age, older, younger. Everywhere there's a smart person with an interesting perspective who can help you figure out what it is that you are best suited to do going forward. And one thing which I think is really vital is that, so remember Joseph Campbell and Follow Your Bliss, the idea of follow your bliss and the money will follow.
Yeah. Well,
that is not a particularly, to put it mildly, that's not a really good piece of advice because, bliss is great, but, and I quote this commencement address that I read a couple of years ago, a venture capitalist named Ben Horowitz from Silicon Valley, who went to Columbia, and he gave a commencement address at Columbia. And he was saying, if follow your bliss were a prescription for success, then every contestant on American Idol would be a zillionaire. And his point was, and this is to graduates, right, who are kind of starting in life and they get pumped up with lots of inspirational claptrap and commencement speeches. He said, follow your usefulness. Don't follow your bliss. Follow your usefulness. And I thought, this makes a lot of sense, not just for graduates, for young people, but it makes sense for older people as well, right? We have lots of usefulness to share and to execute on. And I think that's really this opportunity that we have now, is to be really useful for ourselves, for other people. And that if we can really follow our usefulness, that usefulness can turn into our bliss.
I wanted to ask you also, you talked about having a new career and changing careers and finding something, fulfilling. A lot of it seems to relate to entrepreneurial kind of things, because as you said at the start, generally speaking, people in their 50s or, later in their life, they've got some experience, they know what they're doing, and they do better. How do you help someone who thinks, I'm not an entrepreneur, I've got no desire to do that?
Yeah. I think that is, and I also get into this conversation a lot. So I don't think that everybody has to be an entrepreneur or has to be a freelancer. But I do think that everyone has to think like an entrepreneur. And so the meme on that is that no matter whether you are being paid as a W-2 or as a 1099, as a salaried person or a contractor, you want to think of yourself as a consultant providing value to a client, not as an employee taking directions from a supervisor. So that it kind of goes to a mindset, which is, what's a problem that I can find and then figure out how to solve? It's not about just showing up and doing the work. It's about being strategic, looking ahead, and taking more responsibility.
That's an interesting point of view. I was thinking about what you said just a couple of seconds ago about reframing things. And I was listening to your TED Talk where you also spoke about reframing in order to figure out the direction that you're going to go. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people find really difficult, that reframing, because if they've been doing a job for 20, 30 years, they're kind of, with a blind, they're going along with their blinders on, thinking this is all I do.
Yeah.
How do you help them reframe to say, hey, yeah, sure, I did that job for 30 years, but I got a lot out of it. And I learned so many things, and, take it down a different path.
Yeah. Here's an exercise that anybody can do to help begin the reframe process. Just take a piece of paper, and in the center of the paper, draw a little circle and write the words "I am" in the middle of that circle. And then draw lines out from that circle, and write one line that describes, one line. Write a series of nuggets around what it is that you loved doing in your work. And it doesn't have to be about the bottom line, or it doesn't have to be about, it could be, I loved replacing the 5-gallon water bottles in the kitchenette. I'm just picking that randomly out of my head. But in other words, it doesn't have to be what you would think of as directly related to your job, to what they pay you for. Because in many cases, they don't know what they're paying you for, right? And they're kind of going on inertia. But in the meantime, over the course of the time you're there, you're picking up a lot of valuable experience that is, I would argue, portable, that really goes below the nominal value of what your job description said. So to be able to freely just catalog all of these nuggets of what you love doing, and it could be in your job, could be in the volunteer work, could be with your family, could be with your friends. What are the intuitive reactions, responses that you have to that question? And start cataloging these ideas, and you can do that kind of star pattern, those lines. You can do this on Post-its or index cards. But I think it's really helpful if you get it out of your head, put it on paper, and be able to have it in this movable format where, I mean, remember refrigerator magnets? Maybe you still have refrigerator magnets where, the challenge was to mix and match those little words to form phrases and wisdom or whatever it was that you could do. It was fun. And this is a great process to use for figuring out your next steps, whether it's career-oriented or lifestyle, location, maybe you want to move. I mean, any problem that you've got that's big, that you can't get a handle on, start breaking it down into those little components. And what will happen, and this goes back to reframe, what will happen is that you will kind of short circuit or shortcut or end run, I guess is the word, that judgmental part of you that says, well, I am this person and I can't do that. And this is not the way the world works. And I'm not the kind of person who. Anytime you hear yourself say that, stop. Because who says you're not that kind of person? You've been saying that to yourself for many years. It may not be true. So reframing is this process of getting all of these ideas out, of using your imagination. And it's not just one session. This is an ongoing process. So I would really encourage people to use a whiteboard or a cork board and put these ideas up on the wall somewhere where you're going to see it every day, and keep looking at it and see, spend a few minutes just looking at it and going, that's interesting. And maybe something will jar and you'll go, I'm going to change that noun into a verb, right? Or there was another experience and I wonder what it was and I can't remember it. And you'll pick up the phone, you'll call a colleague and say, hey, remember that trip that we went on with a client and this happened and we were in this restaurant. What was, tell me that story again. And that will rekindle the memory of something that was very significant, perhaps. Again, I'm making this stuff up, but to kind of give you an idea of the freedom that you want to use to explore and to be open to the possibility that there is so much more for you out there. If you would just gently move off of your limited thinking or limited beliefs about what you have. And this fear that we all have around change. And this idea that, oh my God, if I change, it's like pulling the plug out of the bathtub and all the water is going to drain out and I'm going to be left with nothing. And that is an irrational fear. Because the truth is that the exact opposite happens. That you actually pull the plug out of the bathtub and the bathtub starts to fill up, right? Because, and I wasn't really intending to make this analogy, but the truth is that there is actually more pressure coming into the bathtub, your mind, your consciousness, from your imagination, from the universe, than there is that wants to go out, right? So we fear this lack when in fact we have oodles of abundance and opportunity waiting for us to just let it in.
I really like that. I like that analogy, actually.
I'm going to use it again. I hadn't thought about it before. Thank you.
No, it's great because it changes everything about the way that you look at it. If you stop and think, I'm all stressed because I'm scared I'm losing something, but then you open that up and whoosh, there's a whole bunch of new opportunities, new ideas, new things coming in.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story from my own personal reinvention. As you talked about how I'd reinvented myself at 50, and I had, I was in the movie business for all told 35 years with a little 10 year sabbatical into technology in the 90s during the bubble. And that was a great experience to kind of get out of this day-to-day movie business stuff and being executive and be an entrepreneur and start a company and raise the money and all that. And then, of course, it went up. And then in 2001, the NASDAQ crashed and everything crashed and we crashed with it. And the customers went away and the money went away. And I thought, what am I going to do now? And I decided to go back to school and earn this psychology degree. But I had remortgaged the house for the last time. You know, I had a little girl in elementary school. My wife wasn't working at the time. And I thought I got to do something, but I have no idea where I'm going. And this introspective process was very much this kind of pulling the stopper and feeling like, I'm on my last legs here, and I don't know where this is going to lead. But the miracle of this was that in the process of doing a lot of this reframing, and of course, this was a psychology program, so it was all about understanding the mechanisms and the behavioral patterns in our minds, and it was an experiential program. So I was doing a lot of the work on myself and other people, and were collaborating on this. So it was a very, very interactive process. And I began talking differently about myself and kind of realized different interests. So I started interviewing, and this one job that just where the interview process seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. And I kept meeting new people. I was like, well, what's going on? Well, we want you to meet some more people. And we don't know if we've got a job for you, but you're an interesting person. So we want to, introduce you to more people. And this was at DreamWorks Animation. And eventually they hired me. And, but it took 9 months. And it was easily the best job of my career. And it was that case of pulling the plug, risking losing everything, and having everything but be filled up. So I took this real bet on myself, and the universe said, oh, that's who you are. We're going to bring you a job that's just right for you. And that's exactly what happened. It was totally miraculous on one level. On another level, I allowed it.
And that makes a big difference.
Yep. So my point, recommendation, encouragement to anyone who's watching and listening is that you really have the miracle inside you right now for what your next step is going to be, for what your future is going to look like. And in a way, and I know this sounds perhaps naive, but it works. If you can get out of your own way and be open and be willing to look for the opportunities that show up, they will show up for you.
And I think along those same lines, if you do the little bit of exercise like you're talking about to figure out what you might be interested in, what you might be good at, there's a lot to be said for the idea that the reticular activating center in your brain is going to start looking for that. If that's the thing that you're focused on, that's what you're going to see. That's what's going to show up. Just the same way that after you buy a new car, everybody's driving that car because that's what you're looking at.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned the reticular activation system. That is so true. And that is such a powerful part of our neurological makeup.
So when people are doing this and they're busy thinking about what it is they want to do and what they might be able to do, one of the things that I know a lot of people worry about and a lot of people have faced is the idea that as they get older, people don't want them in the workplace. There's some cultures which are lovely, revere their elders, but our culture isn't one of those. And right. How do you help people get over that and get past the ageism that's out there?
Yes. It is toxic. I'm always talking about this. I'm always engaging with people about ageism, about how to deal with it. There is no convincing people who are biased, regardless of what the ism is, whether it's ageism, racism, any of the biases that are out there today that we are all dealing with. You can't convince someone that they're wrong about this. Ageism is a particularly strange ism because it applies to everyone. Everyone's going to get old. So it is really, as one writer has described it, it is this fear and bias against one's future self, which seems to make no sense, but it's real. What I think is also the case is that we are reaping the harvest of a segmented, age-segregated society. And in the old days, of course, we lived in multi-generational families, and it was very common for there to be relationships between older people and younger people. In America, we have sequestered old people into their own homes, their own places left to die. We don't keep them around. We don't take care of them. Although that's changing, and I think that's good. And I think that anything we can do to encourage multi-generational environments is good. I have a course on LinkedIn Learning about this, which your listeners might find interesting, about the advantages of the multi-generational workforce and how we need to use diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in companies to include age as part of the diversity agenda. And there's a guy named Carl Pilmer at Cornell who's done a lot of research about multi-generational workforce and society in general. And it's as simple as putting older people and younger people together in the same room, the same team. And a lot of this just falls away. But in practice, we encounter this, and we encounter this age shaming that goes on. And I believe that the way to circumvent it is to barrel right into it. So I was just today on a conversation on LinkedIn about this with someone. Don't hide your age on your resume. Don't give in to the idea that your age is shameful. Celebrate the experience that you have. And by being forthright, look for and bond with others out there who also recognize the value that you bring because of your age and your experience. And this goes to a very important part of the job process for me as a career coach, which is stop chasing job openings and start building relationships, particularly as an older worker, as an older candidate. Your value cannot be encapsulated in a 2-page resume. It's a great start, but the real value that you have is based on the affinity that you have with other people who understand what you represent, what you can do. And you have to do that by building relationships, whether it's online on LinkedIn or Facebook or in other social media platforms, or in person. And we're going back out there where we're going to be able to reach out, to get together in groups. We're going to be able to meet with people who share our affinities professionally and otherwise. And those relationships are what will get you the referral you need to the job. So you need to be actively meeting new people and be curious, be a researcher. You're not hat in hand trying to get someone to give you a job, you deserve to be a peer and to be a colleague with other people who are in your field or in contiguous fields. Have questions for them. They'll have questions for you. Build a relationship based on shared interests. Get referred to other people who want to broaden the conversation. Learn more. Figure out where are the areas that you would like to improve your knowledge, and go for those areas. You may find that there's income in those areas, and that if you spend 6 months, 12 months, 18 months as a student, as a intern, as some kind of a fellow traveler in these circles, you may find that because of your value and what you know about life and working with people, they're going to say, look, I don't care that you don't have a degree in this. You know how to do this. We're bringing you in.
I think that's a great place to kind of stop, because it's a call to action, and really, because it's, get out there and be you, show off what you've got. And I think that's the big key is You've got a lot.
Yes. And I agree. Be you. It's okay to be you.
John, I think you've got a couple of things that you offer on your website. Can you tell us about them?
Yes. Well, there is an ebook that I want to offer to your viewers and listeners. And if you go to the following URL, it's go.johntarnoff.com/3 steps, the number 3 steps, 3 STEPS. There is a free ebook, which really is intended to kind of get you going on the process. And I talk about 3 things that you can get going right now to begin this process of figuring out your next move. 3 valuable exercises that you can adopt to get this process going.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you very much. I'm sure that the listeners will get a lot out of that.
It's my pleasure.
It's very valuable. And your regular website is johntarnoff.com.
Yes, and you can just search for me pretty much anywhere by using my name, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search me on LinkedIn, and I publish regularly across a bunch of these channels. It's all about second act careers, mid to late career job search, and using the tools and techniques of the digital age to support all of us in getting sustainable, persistent, rewarding, meaningful careers.
Awesome. Thanks very much, John. I've really enjoyed talking with you today.
My pleasure.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.